Okay, yes. Yeah, the lecture is now recorded. So hello everyone on the next session. So now we have a great speaker, Artur Roszczyk, who will tell you about game design toolkit. So you can already see from the first slide what will the talk be about. So we hope you will enjoy it. And Artur, if you are ready, the Zoom is yours. And maybe
Cool.
you can also tell us how would you like to answer the questions? Would you like people to just post their questions on chat and we'll ask them later at the end, or would you like to have this session more interactive?
No, I would prefer the first one. So just let the people post on the chat and I will answer at the end for sure.
Okay, that's great. So let's do it. Okay, so we can start. Thanks.
Cool. Okay. So hello everyone. My name is Artur Roszczyk, as Paweł told, and I've been making games for over 60 years. So it's a long journey. And yeah, and during that time, I used a variety of tools, so concepts, techniques, and frameworks to just help me with my job. And I wanted to share some of them, the one that worked for me, and a lot of them I still use right now at my day-to-day job at Orbital Night. So basically, this presentation is a compilation of such tools. And I think you can consider it, like just like a deck of cards. So on each card, you will have just some short description that can spark some idea, and yeah. So let's go. Okay. So, but first, I would like to stop for a moment to consider what's a good game production. Because these tools that I will show here are just basically, to guide you when you will have a lot of problems during game production. So for me, good game production consists of 5 attributes. And the first is vision. So, for me, like if there is no vision that is identified for the game, then for sure the game won't be successful and probably it won't even come to fruition in the end. It will be cancelled, basically. So there has to be this vision which is shared by all of the team members. And the next one is experimentation. There has to be a time and openness to just basically try new directions, prototype things, and there has to be this mindset in team members that not all of the features, that will be implemented will end in the final game, right? We have to understand that we're learning. As we are developing our game, we're also learning about it. So this is why some things that we implemented just basically will go to trash. And the scope for the production has to be realistic. So, it can't be like too short time for the production with this, considering some scope, right? It has to be all thought out, and also it has to support game vision. And we also have to have a flow of information, which is very, I would say, fluent. So each developer should be able to know what's happening, with the game, what's happening with the production, and also what's happening with the company, of course, if we go as far as this. And of course, you can use Slack or Discord, but it's not just about apps. I think it's mostly also about the mindset that team members have to want to share their feedback. And also people who get feedback has to, discuss it and just basically respond to it in some positive manner. It's very important. And there is also the last one attribute is just that schedule has to be based on this, that the production of the game is basically an iterative process. So if we, for example, would have production which is based on Scrum somehow, and we will have sprints. So if these sprints will have like 1 week time span, so on every end of the sprint, so on sprint review, all of the team members should be able to play a new build of the game, talk about it, and plan for the next sprint, right? And this way, the production will go, will be going further, right? And plans has to be adjusted to what we have right now. So this is why I thought that I will share with you this toolkit, these tools, because basically this is ideas and some frameworks, processes that can assist you to navigate the issues that will come during the production. And as you will see, probably some of these tools won't really make sense for your project. So basically, choose them as you would like to, and if something doesn't resonate with you, it's okay, right? And with that in mind, let's go for the ride. So the first group that I want to share with you is about ideation. So, many times you want to come up with idea for new games, for new mechanics, for some actual game that is already in production or even live, for new levels, for some story. So these tools will help you with that. So the first one, which I think is kind of classical, but maybe not everyone heard about it, it's basically very popularized by game jams. And I use it a lot when I want to come up with new ideas for games. It's very simple. You just have to have on your desk a timer, in some on the hand, right? So you can really easily get it. Open generator and the notepad with some pen, right? And I really love this generator. It's from, I think, some game jam also. And I work with it like that, but I just basically set timer for 3 minutes. I have a physical timer, which I really like because it's very handy. And then I just click generate right on this site. And I have 4 hints generated for me. And it's not about being too strict about it. You just basically look at it and take some time to just be inspired by these hints. And you will have some ideas, then you just write down all of them as they come to you. It's good to keep it short, 1-2 sentences is cool enough. And you don't really criticize those, you just basically write down everything that you came up with, because you will have time to review those ideas later, right? This process is not about reviewing it, it's about generating ideas. And I really like to do it like in 30-minute sessions, which are not so exhaustive. And and after 30-minute session, I can have a break. And if I like the amount of ideas that I generated, then I consider it finished. If not, I can do another 30-minute session. So this is this one. Another one is just basically being curious. So if you like, play some game on the market, and just basically ask yourself, what if something, right? So if I would play like a shooter game, I would maybe ask, what if I couldn't shoot, right? Of course, it changes everything, but maybe this will spark some great ideas for me. And what if I could, build without the need for any currency, right? In this case, about some strategy game. Then the next one is about platformer. I think you know what I mean by that. Another one, which is, I think, very classical, but I don't know if there is like some structure for brainstorm, which is like, I don't know, in theory you can find it, but just basically for me, what works the best is that I give a hint to my team. So just, I just tell them what feature we are seeking for, right? So maybe, I will want a game mechanic for our already produced game. And I want it to be game mechanic which is offensive. So I will say that, okay, we're looking for an offensive game mechanic. We don't want this mechanic to be defensive, and we want, and also maybe we want it to be very dynamic, right? And this is enough. We don't want to close the space for new ideas too much. So it's just basically about these basic guidelines, so that members of your team can much more easier focus on the session and on generating new ideas. And I also think what works for me is to have a list of some ideas to kickstart the session. So, before I probably had some meeting with over designers, and we already got some ideas for game mechanics. And I can share them with the team on this brainstorm session to just kickstart it. And then you just basically listen and note all ideas. And again, don't criticize, because you will have time to review these ideas later. And probably you will, this way, during the production, you will generate a lot of ideas. So it's good to to get them into some kind of archive. And for me, it works great if I just keep those ideas in one location. For me, Notion works really nice. I can have filters, I can tag ideas, and it's very easy to review these ideas in the future. And I don't know, maybe I would say a couple of words. Why would we like to leave them somewhere? Maybe it's not really something obvious. It's just that this idea right now in this production phase, maybe it's not a good mechanic to be implemented because we don't have so much time, or we are not looking for a mechanic like that. But maybe in the future we will be looking. And also sometimes you have ideas which you can't really flesh out. You don't really know, you kind of like it, but you don't know what to do with it. It's also okay. You just leave it in this archive, and probably in the future, if it's a good idea, it will come back to you and you can flesh it out further, and then you will know how it can work in your game. Because again, game development is about learning about your game. So you will know new things, and you will connect the dots, right? So this is like all what I had about idealization. I think it's enough, really. And another group is game design analyze. And this is very important, right? Because for me, game design is basically about making decisions in very big part, and you have to make meaningful decisions. And for that, you have to explore it, right? You have to explore different ways, it connects with your game, different problems, and so on. And there are certain, again, tools, right, that you can just basically use to help you with that. So the first one I really like, and I use it a lot, is just basically block out diagrams. So using whiteboards, you just know already what problem you want to analyze. You already identified it, and you just block out ideas, faults, feedback from the team. It's also very important on the whiteboard. And you just try to connect these cards and come up with with new cards. And it's also good to ask some questions, because many ways some parts that you came up with or the team came up with aren't really needed. It's like very important for games that really the simplicity is the key. So it's also good to ask, maybe I can achieve this output that I want in some simpler ways. Maybe this element isn't needed at all, right? And, it's also important to know that, if you add some mechanics, they can promote or negate some over mechanics, and they can also promote some dynamic in the game. So you can also ask yourself if this is what you want. And of course, about the relation between elements. So I find it really nice. On this kind of whiteboard, you can add all kind of content, right? Images, video, and so on. And some links, right? It depends, of course, on the app, but it's like very, very nice. Another one, kind of similar, but not really in practice, is mind maps. Again, you have a problem you want to analyze. And the first thing I do is just basically I do a brainstorm with myself, and I list all of the ideas that I had about problem in just without any, grouping them in any branches. Just it's basically I will have a lot of branches. And then I will group this in some meaningful branches. And again, it's about asking yourself and, about analyzing all of that. So you can see maybe some branch that is, the less explored, right? It has the less items in itself. So then, the question arises, why? Right? Maybe we should focus and explore it more, or maybe it's not needed. So yeah, mind maps are really nice also for that. And another one I really like is something I call bullet points train. It's basically again, you have your problem identified, and you write down this problem you want to solve. And I really like this approach and the idea that writing is thinking. I think it's very true. And yeah, and as child bullet points, you just basically list freely your ideas about the problem, and if some idea you have like sub ideas to it, then you can add a child and so on. And this way, it's very dynamic way to review some problem, and also in the process you are already grouping it in some kind of groups. in some kind of subjects. Yeah, I think it's very nice. Like this example is from Spire Blast. You can find this game on Apple Arcade, and basically it's that I was supposed to make. We already decided on the game mechanic for the new levels, and it was already like some prototype was already implemented. And I had this task to make it playable, to bring it to release. So I was working on this mechanic and trying to make it fun. So we have some of it that I just made a screenshot from some part of this analyze that I got. And of course, you just write it down as you work, right? So we work with your editor, and you have some problems, you write it down, you have some ideas, you write it down, and and then analyze it. It's kind of like a thinking framework. Another way is to illustrate it. Yeah, I just love drawing, and so I do it quite a lot. And but it's also if you have like some complex system where you have many dynamics, many subsystems, and many states. Yeah, this is the word. Many states and some attributes of these states. Then it's good, to just show it by pictures, and it's much easier to just basically to grasp and work with this system. Yeah, so now we go to research, and like if you make games, research is all about playing, really. But I won't say that it's so easy as just to play, games, because it's about playing these games with some kind of mindset and intention, right? And you can just basically one intention would be very easy to just randomly scan games for ideas, and you also do it when you're just in this, in maybe before production, and you're looking like very broadly, so you can just do it. But also, many times you just want to play a game to reverse engineer some mechanics or parts of a game. And I would like to note that it's very important to be playing this game, I would say, mindfully. So basically, you have to note what you feel and what you think as you play the game. And it's very important because, if you feel that you're bored by a game, it's good to note it, to note why are you bored by this game? What's the problem? Because if you're making the similar game, from the same genre, then you don't want to make the same kind of mistake, right? You want to make this game more interesting for a longer time. So yeah, so it's it's this kind of playing. And also you can look for references in other games, like using YouTube, or sites like I mentioned here. Like you can study interfaces in other games, using this very interesting site, Interfacing Game, or you can search for some cultural schemes, using TV tropes. Yeah, and some game wikis, and of course ChatGPT. It's also really nice if you have some idea, some mechanic, and you want to know other games that use these game mechanics. You can ChatGPT is very nice to list those, and then you can go from here and maybe look at YouTube for gameplay videos of this game or even play it. So yeah, it's very nice. And yeah, and about game wikis. So this game analysis is basically it's funny because if you're like making a game which is strategy game and maybe it has it's kind of similar to, for example, let's say Heroes of Might and Magic, when this game is really well analyzed and to the point where you can really read what was the formula for some damage or this kind of thing. So it's very very detailed. So you can just basically copy it to your game and then fine tune it. It's very very good. Yeah, and another way I really like is creative cards. I really love this that I shown here on the photo is basically the art of game design and deck of lenses. And probably some of you maybe know the book. It's a very great book, The Art of Game Design. But not many people know that you can also buy the whole book in a way in the format of cards, and it's really great. And yeah, what I like is just to draw a couple random cards and see, if they spark some ideas. Many times they can unstuck me, they can bring new perspectives, to my problem. And this way I can come up with new innovative solutions or see, new problems, because it's also very important to see problems before they arise when programmers will implement them. Because I think design is also about foreseeing, right? And so it's a great to do this. Another thing, which maybe is kind of obvious, but it also works very well, it's just basically to search images, videos, to serve you, as a references, as inspiration. Yeah, it's always good to do. This one is pretty interesting, I think. I used it a couple of times when I was working on story design for some games. It worked really well. It is basically first you have to brainstorm with yourself and list all of the ideas and all of maybe characters that you have, events in your story, and so on. And you list it with just 1-2 words. So basically, it's like it's like a titles, right? And then you just place every title like that on the page, on the single page, make it as big, as you can fit the page, print out, all the pages and scatter them on the floor. And now you just go a little away, not so far away that you won't see anything on the paper, but you just want to see this text in this paper, and it can spark new ideas and new ways to connect. And it's also good, to unstuck, right? Because many times you are so invested in what you're doing, what you are thinking about, that you already have this kind of bias, about this thing, and you don't really see another approaches to it. So it's cool. Yeah, so just see. So now is about playing. So again, it's good to play your game. I think it's kind of obvious. But I would like to point here that because many times when you are, of course, developing a feature or your game, you will play test it, right? And I think it's kind of obvious, but you have to play test it every time you change anything, right? If you like change, I don't know, some parameter, it's always good to just play test it and see if the change really works and if it really works the way you would like to, and so on. But what I mean by this slide is that you should play it from the beginning. So, you should find time while you are in your production to play your game from the beginning, as a new player would. Because this way you will see, problems that you wouldn't see otherwise, right? Because game is this kind of like progressive medium, right? It's like you have levels which difficulty rises and, it kind of fluctuates and new mechanics are introduced and player has to learn them and, the skill and knowledge of the game of the player grows. So when you will play it from the beginning, you will experience it much more fully. And and also another great idea is especially if you're making handheld games, is basically to play these kind of games in their natural habitat, I would say. So, and maybe even take it to the extreme. So play it in crowded restaurant or in some subway, because this way you will encounter problems, but you won't really encounter them if you play it in your silent home, right? And also, of course, have your games played. So it's about playtesting them by other players. And what I really like to point it out here is that it's not about asking questions. It's mostly about looking at what your players are doing on the screen. So you should just basically look what they're doing, where they got stuck, where they have some difficulties with your game, or maybe where they play in a different way that you envisioned, but it's somehow very creative, and maybe you would like to support it even further. And the places where players are having fun, you can also identify these places, and then when you will be developing your game further, you can just basically focus to make these kind of situations much more frequent. And only if you are watch it closely, only when they finish playing, then you can really ask questions, and I will tell it about later, I think. It's here. So you can also use player playthroughs. YouTube is full of player playthroughs, and again, you should really look what players are doing, not what they are talking about. And I would say that I was really impressed. I'm impressed every time I see people playing my game in this kind of playthroughs, because it's so surprising for me the way they play, or different things, and I can see my game in new ways. So it's very good. And of course, you can also use it to watch over games that it's not yours, to see, why players really like these kind of games, right? To just basically formulate opinions about it and use them in your game development process. I don't know if you know, but you can also run paid playthroughs. There are sites like Latest Cloud, for example, and basically you pay players to play your game, and they record video from this playthrough, and player also has to talk while playing it. It's also very nice. Yeah, now we go to more specialized, I think, tools. So we start with UI mockups, and user interface can really break your game. You know, you can have like really great core gameplay experience and so on, but if you have like really awful user interface, it will basically break your game, and players don't like to play it, and they will be really confused about it. So, and it's always great to iterate your user interface as soon as you can. So this is why I like to, do these kind of really quick mockups. And I can iterate on these mockups, and I can, even by doing this kind of mockups, I can already revise my design and maybe see that the screen is too crowded. And as I said before, it's all about simplicity, really. You want to make things as simple as they can be, but not simpler. So this is a great way, right, to prototype your user interface. And if you want to take it further, you have tools for that, you have apps for that. You can, for example, use Figma or Just in Mind. Just a couple of examples of it. It's great. You can build interactive prototypes of your user interface, run it on your platform for the game, and yeah, it's very, very cool. And it's much less costly than just basically iterating user interface, which will be developed by a group of graphics and programmers, because it's much more costly than if you do it by yourself. Another thing, which is also kind of very specialized, but I really like it, is table of progression. So games are progressive in nature. I think I already explained it a little, but so this tool will basically tell you, can be very good to work with your progression. For example, let's look at this screen that I got you here. We have like new world for our game. And as you see, we have like levels which are progressing. Like we have 261, and the last level on the screen we have 280. So there is a progression between all of these levels. And and displaying it in this way, you can see it very clearly. And you can really easily just add some parameters to it, some tags. Yeah, like you can specify length type, you can specify mechanics used, and character of your level. So if I would like design progression for levels for some game, I would first start with a character to just basically design what difficulty and what kind of experience I would like to have on these levels, and how I would like to differentiate it between levels. And then I would match, these tags, these kind of characteristics of character with so that their content of levels would match it, right? So I would match maybe length type, because if the level would be too long, maybe, you know, it won't be good for maybe a regular difficulty level or relax level. And then there are mechanics. And also, as you can see, this is the beginning of a new world. So for the beginning, what we learned from the feedback from the players and so on during the production is that it was best to start the new world with 3 relax levels, and only then, you know, add some difficulty, but again do it very slowly. So introduce 2 regular levels, and only then introduce a choke point, right? So the hardest level. And as you can see, it's kind of like this kind of pattern is kind of scaled a little and used in many ways. So this is why table of progression is great. Yeah, and it's also very important during production, because it will serve as a production template. So, you know, looking at that, if, for example, I am a designer that has to level design this level, 266, I already know that, okay, it should be high, it should have this kind of mechanics, and it should be choke point, right? So I know everything that I has to know to start work on this level. And if I finish it, it will fit the progression. Okay, so the next group is prototyping. So you can prototype all sorts of things, right? It's not only about gameplay, about the new mechanics, but also about level design, about balance and user interface, as you already saw. And for me, the most important thing for a good prototype is to find focus. So I want to find an element, some dynamic or feeling that you know, that is shouting to me, I'm very interesting, right? I'm very exciting. And so this is the element that I want to find and then to focus on it. And I think this is the process. I tried to explain it a little more detailed. So basically, it's the question how to make your mechanic feel alive. So it's this scenario that you have. Like we came up with some idea. The idea is already implemented. There is a first implementation of this idea, and your task, is to make it playable. Your task is to bring it to fruition. So you play it and it's barely playable, right? And now what to do? How to work with it? So for me, what really works, and it works every time that I work on this kind of thing, is that you have to find the most fun element. So, you have to look for this gem, right? And in order to find it, you have to iterate and to basically work on your mechanic, and like I would say, to mold it in many different ways until it clicks. And so for this to work, many times you will have to isolate some features. Even in this basic form of implementation, probably it can be like that there are too many features already implemented. So it's nice to just basically have an ability to turn off some of these features and concentrate only on what's really important. And only then, if you have this, very just very small system, you can scale it only if you find that that you're ready to do it, right? That you find how it works, nice, and maybe even you already found your game, and you want to make it, to make it even more exciting. When you focus on the implementation, just to make more from this experience about this gem. So yeah, it's also about this what I said, and isolation. This is why I also got it here, because it's very important tool. Also, when you balance something, it's just really great to isolate and turn off some things. Like if you have some parameters, you can set some parameters, to 0 or to something, so they won't really interfere with what you're looking for. Yeah, I think it's kind of obvious. What I think it's all in the slide. So let's go on. Yeah, and another detailed approach, specialized approach, is the way to design systems for your game. And system is a flow of resources, right? And you have to understand that many dynamic resources in game can be abstracted. So maybe you would think that, in some dexterity games, speed can't really be abstracted. It can, it's just basically a value. The same is for opponents, right? You can just basically abstract it to a skill level. Dexterity also, dexterity level, just a value. And if you have some complex system, it's nice to abstract it, and then you can really easily, much easier than without it, just work with it and iterate it and try to search for a better design of it. And what's really also great, if you use, like, for example, Machinations, I really recommend this app. It's basically a tool to design game systems, and then you can run and simulate them in real time, or just or not in real time. And you can just, like, for example, you can run like 100 runs, or I don't know, maybe even 1,000 runs of your design, and on you have many ways to review it. You have some tables with results and so on, and you can really see easily how it performs. And if you would compare it, like, for example, you want to just basically run your system 100 times and see the outcomes. So if you would compare it with playing the actual game, you would have to play it 100 times. So it's much more time consuming, of course. So yeah, I think it's really, really great for some complex systems. It's nice. Yeah, I'm kind of finishing, so it's good. So I think the last one, yeah, this is the last one. So the last slide is creator bias. And this is really important to understand, that you have to keep in mind that you played your game tons of hours, right? While developing it, and your player will just basically have much less experience with it. And games, are like this kind of built skill, right? They are skillful. So you can build your skill to such level that, that even very experienced player won't match it. So this is why when you just basically maybe balance your levels, you just have to keep in mind that if it's challenging for you, then for sure it will be unplayable for players. And also, it's I think the best approach is if something is like seems too easy, is good. I mean, in terms of mobile games, right? It's good. It's probably best to leave it like that than to make it more difficult. And also, you will have feedback after the release, and if the level really is too easy, you can make it more difficult, afterwards when you will get feedback from your players. Also, a nice way to kind of lower your skill is to play your game with inverted controls. You can set higher movement speed. You can play. You can just basically play with your stats and make it really low. It's for some RPG games. Just basically to make this game much more harder. But it will be, yeah, to count for this creator bias. Yeah, so that's all.
Okay.
So yeah, I would really like to wish you to have fun with your projects in hackathon, and I will be lucky to help you with if you have some design problems.
Great, great. Thank you, Arthur. All right, I can see that we have the first question on our chat. So the question from Rafael, if it is the first quantum game hackathon for you. I remember that you were also involved 2 years ago, I think, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
I
so.
was. Yeah, I was doing talk about accessibility.
Yes. Did you maybe participate in some other quantum games hackathons? Because I know that there are also like something like Quantum Game Jam and maybe
No,
also.
no, yeah, no, not really. But I was participating with some game jams. Like, I was like, participating a couple times in global game jam. So I know how it is, and yeah.
Okay. So based on your experience with the jams or hackathons, because here on this hackathon, the participants will have about 7 days to develop a game, which is not much, but from a perspective of hackathon, it's also quite a lot because some
Yeah.
hackathons or jams are for only 2, 3 days. So based on your experience, how do you think, how much time do you recommend to spend on just designing the mechanics of the game? Before starting implementing it when the participants have about 7 days to complete the game.
Okay. Yeah, I would say it's really kind of similar to the actual game production because I'm not really advocate of too much design. I mean, you can write a lot on your paper, you can block out a lot of things, but you won't really see how your ideas will perform in the game until you will prototype it. So basically, it's just that when you identify your core gameplay, so what your idea for the game, and I don't know, I think you should really have already an answer to just what direction would you like to go, what will be special about your game, what will be this element that you really like to flesh out, to really shine. And from without this element, this game experience will be not the same as you envisioned. And then just basically a prototype, and while prototyping it and working with these prototypes, you will encounter problems, and in this, in solving this kind of problems, these kind of tools that I presented here will just basically assist you, right?
Okay. Great. Yeah, there's another question from Rafael. What are you expecting on quantum games now? So especially quantum games. So I know that you don't have much expertise with just quantum computing, quantum mechanics, but maybe you can say something. But it's also based on your experience with different game jumps, basically.
Okay. Uh,
So maybe just to
no,
recall,
I
because
think that, I
mhm,
think that it's all about fun, right? So
mhm, mhm,
fun in doing and, and just basically working on your project, but also fun that will be from playing your game.
yes. Playability is one of the criterion for judgment indeed. And I received a private message from Jatin Rana. If you were a solo team, so only one person in the team, would you prefer an MVP, so minimum viable product, with good graphics, or more functionality rather than the graphics? Or maybe an even of all the things?
Okay. Yeah, I would prefer MVP for sure. I mean, I would like to to present experience when I envisioned as fully as I could. But of
Mm-hmm,
course, having in mind that I have only 7 days, and yeah, and and probably my plan will just basically turn into ruins somewhere in the middle of these 7 days, and I will have to innovate and and many times this kind of limitations basically make your game maybe different what you envision, but much better and much more fun in the end.
mm-hmm. Okay, great, thanks. Do we have more questions to Artur? So Artur is also available on our Discord. So he's also one of the mentors. So you can also try to contact him there
Yeah.
or by email. So the email is also provided in the Google spreadsheet that we have already shared with the participants. So, all right, I don't see more questions now. So I think we can finish. So I will stop recording now.
Okay.